Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the podcast that shows you how to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without acting like a douchebag. I'm your host, innovative sales coach, Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method. Because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved. If you're a service provider selling your own service and you're ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo and win more sales without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, then go to Aleashabahr.com. So this episode is with Joyce Marter. Joyce is a licensed psychotherapist, entrepreneur, and global keynote speaker. She founded, built, and successfully sold a multi-million-dollar mental health company and is a contributor to Psychology Today, Money Geek, and more. Her book, The Financial Mindset Fix, has been published in 4 languages and won 8 book awards. Renowned for her expertise in the psychology of money and holistic success, Joyce has appeared in outlets such as CNN, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and MTV, reaching an audience of over 1.7 billion people annually. And I got to tell you guys, this is the first person that I've had back on the podcast again ever. And that's because she's just so awesome, y'all. The way she approaches finance is very approachable. And she sort of like stumbled upon it because she was doing therapy and realized that people's finances seem to be getting better at the same time. And thus it was born. So I'm so excited to have you back here, Joyce. Let's go. Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word.
Thanks so much for having me, Aleasha. I always love talking with you.
Always. I wish that we could just have a multiple day girls' vacation or something. Sounds amazing.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to talk about a really cool concept we were discussing beforehand of becoming the author in your own financial story. And for listeners, that might be like, how am I not the author? Like, I'm the only one doing it. So can you explain a little bit what you mean about becoming an author and how people might know that they are not the author right now?
Well, as a psychotherapist, I believe that we're all shaped and molded by our earlier life experiences. And many of us start out as the protagonist of our own money story. So, growing up in your family origin, what were the messages around money? Did your parents argue about money? Was there always enough money? Was there never enough money? What did your grandparents and ancestors go through regarding money? Is there intergenerational financial trauma? All of those beliefs become the narrative that we tell ourselves, our money story. And those beliefs, according to cognitive behavioral therapy, precede our emotions and our behaviors around money. So if we were told when we were young that people with a lot of wealth are greedy and selfish and bad, then we may be unconsciously pushing wealth away from us because we believe we have conflict around that. And if we believe, other messages that, for example, when we get money, we have to save it, under the mattress or it's going to all go away. Those can be behaviors that we carry into our adult lives, and some of them are not adaptable. So we want to not just be the star of our money story, but also be the author. And what that means is becoming empowered, becoming financially literate, and instead of having an external locus of control where we believe that we were born into a certain financial circumstance and the government, the economy, and outside forces determine our financial health and wellness, we're going to shift to an internal locus of control where we can take the reins and we can flip the script. We can write different chapters for the rest of our life regarding our financial story. And we can use it with narrative therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and other proven tools from psychology.
I love that so much because so many of us are really unconsciously creating results that we don't want in our life. And we've talked about that in different ways on the show, but not really specific to money. And especially when, things like right now are extremely uncertain, it's so much more important to become aware of your money story, right? So like it probably is getting triggered in an extra way during this like uncertain time. And so what type of things do you see happening in times of uncertainty? Like, are you seeing any patterns in how people are being triggered and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So during times of economic uncertainty, and right now we've got the tariffs, we've got decreased federal funding affecting programming and corporations around, the country, if not the globe. And there's a lot of financial uncertainty in the market, et cetera. I think a lot of people aren't spending money right now, whether it's corporations or businesses or individuals, and that's affecting people's businesses. And so it's really normal and common to then have a scarcity mindset around money.
Mm. Mhm.
And a scarcity mindset is fear-based and it's negative. It's the idea that there's not going to be enough money or resources for all of us. So we need to be afraid. We need to be competitive. There's a focus on lack and fear about the future, that opportunities are going to run dry, or that you might lose everything in the stock market and not have enough for retirement or to pay your mortgage or to keep your business open. So there's a huge increase in financial anxiety, especially for Gen Xers like myself and millennials, excuse
Yeah.
me, um, because we're under the most financial stress developmentally. The boomers may have already earned their wealth. They're sitting in a more secure spot, many of them. And Gen Zs are just kind of coming up into their professional lives. They might not have the same pressures and expectations, such as parenthood, wanting to buy a home at this point, and so forth. And there's a huge connection between our financial stress and our mental health, which is how I got into this whole thing. Because when we're financially stressed, it can trigger or exacerbate depression, anxiety, eating disorders, substance misuse, relationship conflict, even financially triggered PTSD and financially triggered suicide, which
Oh,
is really concerning. 20% of suicides are financially
oh
driven.
my
So
gosh.
I know, isn't that so sad and so scary? Because we're all worthy and deserving on a soul level, on an innate level. And our money situation is how we are. It's temporary, it's fixable, and it can change. Even people with tremendous wealth can lose it all. But it's our essence, our soul, our spirit, our authentic selves that is innately worthy and deserving. So we want to separate our worth from our bank accounts and manage them with equanimity or financial calmness and clarity.
Yeah, I mean, money does not define you. It kind of like adds definition maybe to your life, but ultimately, I don't know, if I was having really, really bad money issues, I feel like I'd just like flee the country and like go live on an island somewhere and be a scuba instructor and like live on $5 a day or what. Like there's so many options other than suicide.
Well, and so we want to be compassionate and recognize that some people have grown up with financial trauma, or they may not have the self-worth and self-esteem that you have. So you have a healthy identity that recognizes that you're way more than your money. And you also know that you're resilient and resourceful and adaptable. And so those are the psychological and emotional skills that foster
Mm.
resilience. And so we want to practice mental fitness exercises that actually will improve our ability to navigate financial stress, money anxiety, and financial worry, just as you said you'd be able to do.
Cool. Do you have like an example of those that people can do at home to kind of like help them with this time?
I think a couple of things are really important. First, applying mindfulness to money. So, having a daily meditation, breath work, yoga practice, getting out in nature, focusing on the breath, connecting with the body, getting out of your mind chatter, and facilitating mental calmness. This is going to help you be more financially responsive rather than emotionally reactive.
Mm.
You can also check in with your heart and your gut when making financial decisions. Instead of just resorting on your intellect, there's a lot more wisdom and intuition in the body. And so when we access all of that information that we have available to us, we're going to make more wise financial decisions. Another way to apply mindfulness to money is to practice healthy detachment, which is healthy emotional separation. And I had to do this years ago when I was facing bankruptcy in my business. I had so much financial anxiety that I had insomnia and panic attacks.
Mm.
So each morning I had to wake up and do a mindfulness practice and kind of do a body scan and take all my financial worries and yuck and kind of put them in a container or compartmentalize them and set them aside so that I could be clear and sort of shame free to go through the day and work to save my business. So we don't want our financial shame to eclipse us and, encumber us from being able to do the things we need to do to take action to correct our situation. So healthy detachment also helps us invest. So we can invest money in real estate or the stock market or a business and let go of the uncertainty and trust that over time it will grow without sort of having obsessive compulsive worry around the stock market's performance or et cetera, and the ability to kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture and trust that over time your wealth is going to grow.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because fear, anytime you're in a place of fear, you just can't see things clearly. I
It's
mean,
paralyzing.
yeah, or it's explosive, like a very impulsive reaction. And I think a lot of times like what you're saying is just like, no, just don't do anything. Like the paralysis. And so you saw your money story playing out in your life too. Um, can you give us, like, some history behind that so people can maybe, like I mean, I think you did a really good job of explaining that it's, did your parents say money doesn't grow on trees? Did they, say we can't afford that all the time? Did they say people who spent money were stupid or people who had money were bad? But this can be not just little sayings and stuff, it's also in their behaviors that you learned, right? Which was kind of the case for you.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
my father was born during the Great Depression, and he lived in the inner city of Cleveland with multiple family members in a small apartment. His
Oh,
parents were factory workers, and so he understandably had a scarcity mindset
mm,
and the idea that there wasn't enough food or jobs or money to go around. And so one of the impacts of financial trauma is workaholism. So he worked
ah,
tremendously hard to kind of do a pendulum swing and make sure that he and his family did not end up in that situation. So he was the first person in his family to graduate from college. He actually got his MBA from Harvard, was a
wow.
very successful executive, really smart man.
Mm.
And he, however, was laid off. As I said, even people who are financially well off can have financial trauma. He was laid off in the 1980s when I was an adolescent. He had clinical depression. My parents fought about money. And I believe we all unconsciously recreate what's familiar until we become aware and we choose something different.
Mm.
So I had beliefs that I wasn't supposed to spend a lot of money. It almost stopped me from taking out 50,000 of loans for graduate school because
Mm,
actually my father said, "I'm concerned you won't be able to pay it back." And
yeah.
I'm thankful that I did not listen to that. And I proceeded with my education, which is always a good investment. But I sort of recreated my dad's situation. I started a practice with only $500, 50,000 of student loans, made 1,000 mistakes, ended up in cash flow hell, had that money anxiety, was facing bankruptcy, and it was just like my family of origin, where on the outside, it looked like everything was great. I was on MTV and the news, and I had, 40 therapists working for me. It looked pretty sexy. But on the inside, I had $65 in my bank account and couldn't make payroll. And it was humiliating and enormously stressful. And so we want to change our belief systems around money. My own therapist said to me, Joyce, at this time, she was like, "What does money mean to you? What's the first word you think of?" And I said, "Oh, stress." And she said, "Well, no wonder you make it go away." And I was like, wow. And so my CPA also did a little intervention with me when he looked at my numbers in a business valuation. And he said, Joyce, you're a people pleaser. You're over giving. You're giving to everyone else before yourself. And your business is not really profitable. And he said, you have to recognize that when you have more, you can help more. You're
Mm,
not running a charity to employ other therapists and give them a practice.
mm,
And that work on myself and my own money story, which was, I want to be a peacekeeper. I will take less, make sure others are happy, really was very problematic and led me to do some deep work on my self esteem and my financial boundaries with others. And once the business turned around with the help of so many others, I was able to pay people better, give them better benefits, give to charities, be a philanthropist, have more pro bono clients, and serve the world in a greater way. So, having more money isn't selfish. It's actually, in some ways, less selfish because you're able to help other people more.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And this is something I see come up a lot in like religion. Religious people feel like that they have to be broke or poor to be a good person. And you can do so much less good if you're broke and struggling. And if you have money, you, first of all, are comfortable enough to show up in a different way, but also you can contribute to things more because you're not just scraping things together and have no extra income. And it's interesting because my grandpa-in-law was a pastor, and they don't Christianity doesn't pay pastors very well. But in Judaism, rabbis make like $200,000.
Isn't
And
it fascinating?
it
I
really is.
When I was putting together my book, I had a PhD researcher, and I became interested not only in the psychology of money, but the spirituality of money. And what was interesting is that Christianity, which is the predominant religion in the United States, there is a lot of message about wealth being bad and the love of money being the root of evil. However, in Judaism, there's a lot of appreciation of wealth and sort of respect for wealth and a focus on education and
Mm,
being of service, giving to charities. You think about, my friends who I saw get bar and bat mitzvah, and they're working in charities. They're giving money. That's a routine part of the religion. I also love in mindfulness. It's a more Eastern tradition. And in Hinduism, there's, Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance, who
mm,
has, tremendous wealth, but she also has spiritual enlightenment. So what I'm teaching is not about materialism, excess, or
right.
greed. It's about expanding yourself and growing and developing to welcome the flow of prosperity and abundance into your life so you can be your highest, biggest, greatest, most evolved self and make a difference in the world. And if each of us did that, we could be a lighthouse for others and create positive change, which is very necessary right now. And if we live with enoughness, the idea of minimalism or, being environmentally conscious, that's going to help us even more. And if we earn our money through right action, we're not being abusive to our employees or our vendors or
Mhm.
our clients, that it's a win-win-win for everybody involved, then we're doing ethical business. And so this is all really important. And so I would encourage listeners to, do a deep dive and think about those early money messages and what you heard your family talk about, how that shaped your story, including gender messages. I've worked with a lot of clients that were raised with the belief, as a woman that it wasn't their responsibility to be the primary breadwinner.
Mm.
I've seen in my practice a lot of, unfortunately, lack of financial literacy in women because we've been told our whole life we're not good at math, and we steered away from financial and other STEM um, areas of learning and work.
Mhm.
Thankfully, that's better for younger generations, but it's important for us to do that reflection and also start becoming aware of our money talk, which is,
Mm.
are we having fear-based or catastrophic thoughts around money? And then how can we coach ourselves to reframe those messages?
Yeah, there was so much amazing stuff in what you just said, and, it's so true. I don't know if I ever told you about this exercise I went through where money was personified,
Yes. Tell
and
me your
and what
experience.
relationship you have with it and how you could improve that relationship, and when I thought of money as a person, I realized, like, poor money. Everybody's using it, abusing it, cursing it, hoarding it, killing and causing harm in its name, and it's like, everybody hates me, and I don't even get a chance to do the wonderful things that I'm here to do, and it just I realized that so much of what we're focusing on is not the issue, like, money is not the issue, it's definitely our relationship with it and how we're using it and how open we are to it. Like you said, where money equals stress, then of course you're pushing it away instead of inviting, like, most people are treating money like, "Well, where have you been? I have all these bills to pay, and next time get here sooner, and by the way, I hate you." And, like, money doesn't wanna show up to hang out with that person, or they're like, "Oh my god, you're here, please never leave, I'm holding on to you and I'm never ever letting go," like, suffocatingly clingy, like, money doesn't wanna come around, like, how are you treating it? And so I, like, made this promise to money that, like, I will only use you to create beautiful things and great memories and, never, like, I don't know, insult you? Because we're basically insulting it all the time. And who, like, if money was a person, why would you wanna hang around?
Absolutely. I've heard Judy Wilkins Smith is an author with Sounds True who writes about money, and she suggests going on a walk and talking to money. I love
Mm.
the work of Ellen Rogan as well. And I just read her book, and she talks about, money as if it were a person, just like you're saying, and to reflect on that relationship and the idea that money is energy. And so it's like love or life force. And so how we relate with that affects the flow of money into us, just like the flow of our beliefs affect the flow of love. And our financial, if I like also thinking, and in my book, I suggest imagining your financial life as if it were a person and
Hmm.
how to treat that person. So in my 30s, my financial life would have been Penny, and I was neglectful and abusive of her. I
Yeah.
used my credit cards. I was ashamed of her. I didn't introduce her to anyone. And today I think of her as prosperity, and she's a direct reflection of my self-worth. And I take her pretty darn seriously. And I'm very, very grateful for her.
Yeah, you want to hang out all the time. Come with me, girl. Let me take you to the best parties, the nicest dinners, and like the prettiest beaches. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love
And
that.
so gratitude is an important part of it, and also consciousness. Um, when I was working on my financial mindset, I was listening to Louise Hay's Receiving Prosperity, which is an audiobook from the 1980s.
Mm.
And I noticed I had self limitation and self sabotage around money. So I would ask the universe for only as much as I needed to pay my bills, but not more.
Oh,
And so Louise was encouraging us to welcome a certain amount as much as we felt comfortable. And this was at the time where I was facing business bankruptcy. And I picked the number $2 million, which was, a crazy number for me. At that point, I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And when that accountant came back with my valuation of my business, he said, "Your business is worth $2 million."
yeah. Wow. That is so like I don't know, like Twilight Zone feeling
It
almost.
is, but I think it has to do with our financial consciousness. And I say many of us are sitting on a golden bench. So we have business ideas, artwork, screenplays we've written, a side hustle idea, a promotion that we've never gone for, another service area in our business. And so we need to have the confidence to manifest those so that we can reap the rewards of those gifts that we've been given.
Hmm. I so agree. Don't keep them from the world. Don't hide them. Um, so you have an opportunity that's going to help people with this specifically on a deeper level, right? Joyce, can you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
Yes, so I am working with Dr. Kelly Shu, who is also a financial mindset expert, and she and I have a webinar event that's coming up on June 11th. It is from 6:30 to 8:30 Eastern Time, and we are offering an early bird registration of $97, and we'll post the information in the show notes. You can also find that information on my website, which is joycemarter.com, JoyceMarter.com. And I also, of course, have my book, The Financial Mindset Fix, and accompanying digital course, which can also be found on either Amazon or on my website.
Okay, you guys, I mean, the way Joyce approaches it is so different and so necessary, especially the emotional aspect of it, and really acknowledging that. And like you said, just becoming aware so you can make a different choice instead of doing it passively and just sort of like being a victim to it all. It's all happening to you type of feeling, which is very powerless. And nobody likes to feel powerless. So go register for this webinar and feel in power and in control and in integrity while feeling like that. In integrity with being a good person with ethics and morals and all of these things that we want to be associated with money and absolutely can be associated with money, whether it's an uncertain time or not. So we've reached the end of yet another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. If this was valuable to you, please like, subscribe, and share. That stuff makes such a difference. And thank you all for listening. Until next time.